Hi, guys. How are you? Let's start. Thanks for coming back. Who did their homework? Nice. Who practiced the first level of our 8 skills? Who has questions or battle wounds they want to talk about? So we did appreciation, right? I appreciate when you. So this is how this looked like in my household. To be honest, I thought I didn't have to do it because I'm not assigned a group, but my husband is. So we practiced this week. And for appreciation, it looked like, hey, I appreciate that you've made so much effort in this one area. I would like more effort to be made. So he went in with appreciation. It made the world of difference. And then we went to 2, the word puzzled. Did anybody else use that word? Okay, what fun words did you guys use that you can say in church? I'm curious. Help me understand, right? Did anybody else get any other words? I'm just wondering why, Richard, right? I'm perplexed. You can have a lot of different words that are fun that will express a question. Can you help me understand why? And then we went to 3 complaints with possible solutions. And they did a caveat. If you're safe in your relationship, dare this next step. Who did it? We did. We did too. Does anybody want to share a testimony or a breakthrough? Okay, go ahead. Oh, let me go over there, Monica.
Well, I was minding my own business, and the Holy Spirit started prompting me or bringing something back to my remembrance Sunday night about something that happened at work, and with my I'm a teacher, so I have an instructional aide, and so I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to say something because he's worked with me on. I give passes a lot sometimes for behavior, which can lead to lack of boundaries. So he's shoring up my boundaries. Anyway, long story short, I did say I noticed it was about something. We banter with the kids a lot. I teach middle school, so bantering often, playful often. So, but I felt he would pull me into things with other students he was bantering with that I had nothing a part of. I'm like, why are you bringing me in that? I didn't. That's you and that student. But it happened like 3 times. And the last time he said something, I was like, no, and I had to defend myself. It was all playful, but still I felt it went too far. So I had to bring that up. I noticed that when we are playing with the kids or bantering, but I also added, because I've been taught to talk about how it makes you feel, because that takes it closer to home if someone cares about your feelings. It made me feel disrespected. So I prefer if.
How did it go with that language and talking with him?
It went well. He said, I apologize. He apologized. And, I've trained myself not to say that's okay because we need to receive apologies. So I said, thank you for your apology. I appreciate it.
Nice. I like that. Middle school banter is another language, right? You should check that off on your resume. Does anybody else want to share a breakthrough in one of the steps that they practiced this week? Did anybody get to practice with their kids? How did that go? But you guys are quiet, quiet. Okay, then we move down to new information. Tell me something new that's going on with your life. How did that go for everyone? Did you want to share? Oh, your Super Bowl team didn't win. So that was the new information? Got it. Your expectations were up to here. You're just from the wrong area, I guess. Okay, then we move down to hopes and wishes. Who got to dream over the week? You want to share? I didn't hope or dream. Hopes and dreams of the future. Sometimes we live in the right now, and we don't get that luxury of hoping and dreaming for a future, right? And let me just say that if you guys hit a snag in any of these steps, you can always make a freedom prayer session and we can walk through with you what Jesus is showing you, maybe what he wants to heal inside you so that you can move to the next level. And yeah, does anybody else have any questions or comments? We get Destiny again today. Yes. So this week we are going to learn about clarifying expectations. So we're going to watch the video, and then Destiny is going to come up.
As we begin this session, I want to remind you that these skills are meant to help us grow as followers of Christ. Look at the graphic in your workbook that shows how each skill enables us to both receive the love of God and give the love of God. In our last session, we learned the community temperature reading, or CTR for short. With that skill, I receive the love of God by using my God-given power and voice to express, for example, my preferences and hopes and wishes. But I'm also giving the love of God by avoiding judgments and checking out puzzles and now taking responsibility for my complaints or things I don't like. In this session, you'll actually be taught two skills: stop mind reading and clarify expectations. They both revolve around eliminating assumptions that create confusion and pain, both for yourself and in your relationships. They're simple skills and profoundly practical. These two skills are based on the 9th commandment from Exodus 20. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. When you and I make assumptions about others without checking them out, it's easy to start telling ourselves stories about them in our heads that aren't true. We are bearing false witness in our own thoughts, and this is very damaging to relationships. The first skill, called stop mind reading, is to clarify what another person is thinking rather than assuming you know. It's a skill that can be used anywhere, anytime that I become aware that I'm making assumptions that I have not checked out.
Some Christians get offended at the title of this skill, stop mind reading, because God condemns mind reading in the Old Testament. But that's actually why we call it that. This is the last thing people like us should be involved in. For example, on my days off from church, I used to think, I'm so tired, I'd love to take a nap. But in my mind, I would think to myself, if I take a nap, Jerry's going to be upset. And I just assumed it was important to her that I take advantage of every spare minute on that day to get tasks done on the house. So when I finally learned this skill, I asked her, Jerry, may I have permission to read your mind?
Sure.
And I said, Jerry, is it true that if I take a nap on my day off, that you're going to be upset with me because I'm not getting things done around the house?
No, not at all.
Well, her response made me realize, oh my gosh, I've lost years of naps. So as you saw in your short Bible study, the goal of the book of Proverbs is that we mature from being fools into wise people. As Proverbs 18:15 says, the heart of the discerning or wise acquires knowledge. The ears of the wise seek it out. In other words, we seek to live in truth because we can't build Jesus' kingdom on lies, whether it be in the church, our families, or our places of work.
I have an example where a young woman came to me about how she recently used this skill. She told me she assumed her friend would be upset with her for wanting to reschedule a dinner date. But this time she decided she wasn't going to mind read. So she called her friend and said, I'd like to check out an assumption with you. I'd like to reschedule our dinner date, but I think you'll be upset with me if I do. Is that correct? Her friend said to her, no, I'm actually relieved. I've had a stressful week and it would be better for me to reschedule as well. So you can see how we can begin to tell ourselves stories that just aren't true when we make assumptions. How many times have you laid in bed at night replaying some interaction you had during the day, and you begin making assumptions about it or the person? We automatically start negatively interpreting what happened or what was said without checking it out. And we lose sleep all over an assumption. You've heard the Bible verse, don't let the sun go down on your anger. Well, I want to say, don't let the sun go down on your assumptions.
The principle is simple. Never assume you know what a person is thinking or feeling. Here's how the skill works. Reflect on something you assume someone thinks or feels, but has not actually told you. Then you ask them, may I have permission to read your mind? When permission is granted, you say, I think that you think. Is that correct? Or you can say it this way, can I check out an assumption that I have? I'm wondering, is that correct? Here's an example of what we mean. Let me try this out now, live, with Jerry. Jerry, may I have permission to read your mind?
Yes, you may.
I think you think that I'm responsible to buy our next car, sell our old car, our brown Chevy, get the plates onto the new car, decide where we're going to buy it, how much it's going to cost, and get it all ready, and then basically handle it to you. Is that correct?
No, I don't think you're responsible for all those pieces. And yeah, let's break it down and talk about it because I definitely want to be involved in some of that. So no, you're not responsible for all that. I don't think you are.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can I have permission to read your mind?
Sure.
Okay. So this week, we have to apply for the lottery for Zion National Park. And I think that you think that that's my responsibility. Is that correct?
It has been in the past, but no, I actually do not, and have it written down in my calendar as well.
Oh my gosh, I'm so impressed. Thank you, honey.
All right. Now we're going to show you a vignette of the wrong way of how these situations are usually handled, and then the right way to integrate the skill of stop mind reading. And then you'll turn in your workbooks and you'll follow the instructions so you can do this skill of stop mind reading yourself.
So, Samantha, I know that usually we, spend time together on Saturdays, just the two of us. And since it's Saturday tonight, I know you probably have something you want to do. So, what do you want to do?
Why do you sound so dejected? Is something bothering you?
No. Do you think something's bothering me?
Look, Jason, if you don't want to go out, we can stay in and watch a movie.
Sure. Fine. Yeah, movie sounds great, I guess.
Okay, seriously, what is wrong?
Nothing's wrong. You know I love a movie, and you know I love hanging out with you. You know what? It's really not that big of a deal. We can watch a movie tonight. It's fine. So, Samantha, I know that on Saturdays we usually spend time together, and it's really important for us to spend time together, but I was wondering if we could talk about tonight.
Sure, what do you want to talk about?
I was wondering if I could check out an assumption with you.
Yeah, of course.
Great. So, before we were married, you know how I would hang out with my friends and we'd watch the basketball game? Well, I'm wondering if you'll think I think less of you than my friends if, I choose to skip out on tonight. Is that correct?
No, absolutely not. I know that you love me, and I think it's really healthy for you to hang out with your friends. And honestly, there's gonna be nights where I need to hang out with mine too.
Okay, great. You have no idea how worried I was to talk to you about this.
Well, I'm glad you did.
You're the best.
Assumptions bring so much unnecessary pain to relationships. That's why we actually have 3 different ways of getting at our assumptions. The first was last week in the community temperature reading through the word puzzles. Secondly, we just learned in the skill Stop Mind Reading another way to get at it. Now, this third one is through the skill Clarify Expectations. This skill helps us recognize what expectations we have a right to and how to clarify our expectations with others. Listen, people quit their jobs over unmet expectations. Churches split over unmet expectations. Couples divorce over unmet expectations. Families stop talking to one another over unmet expectations. Friends do the same.
All of us grew up taking in thousands upon thousands of messages around expectations. These messages came from our families, our cultures, TV, social media, schools, friends, even fairy tales. Think for a moment just about the area of marriage. What expectations about marriage did you receive from your family? Maybe something like wives will be in charge of the house and husbands pay bills. Or from fairy tales, you'll live happily ever after. Or from love songs, romance and love come naturally and you don't have to work at it. Holidays and birthdays also come with a lot of expectations. Here's a list of expectations about Christmas that we've collected from people. We'll buy each other gifts of equal value. When we gather this year, everyone will get along. No one will get out of hand. Every Christmas, children will be grateful and well-behaved. Guests will bring food. Everyone will help clean up. As you think about those expectations, what do you notice? Some may be unrealistic, like everyone will get along and there will be no tension, especially if for the last 7 years there has been tension and conflict between Uncle John and Aunt Mary. Then it's unrealistic to expect that it's not going to happen this year. How about buying each other gifts of equal value? You didn't even know you had an expectation around money spent on gifts until you gave a $100 gift and you received a $20 gift. Sometimes we're not even conscious of our expectations until we get disappointed. And finally, you just assumed everyone would offer to bring food without you having to ask them, but they didn't. And now it's last minute and you have to cook the whole meal by yourself. So sometimes our expectations are unspoken. So there are actually 4 problems with expectations. First, they're a problem when they're unconscious. Sometimes we have expectations we didn't even know we had until we're disappointed.
So for example, I expected all of our children to be straight A students until one of my daughters started getting B's and C's. I wasn't even aware I had that expectation. I wasn't conscious of it until it actually happened, and then I was disappointed.
Yeah, and early in our marriage, I had no idea that I expected Pete to work around the house the way my dad did when I was growing up. And when he wasn't fixing things on his day off, I was annoyed. I'm thinking to myself, isn't this his job? So sometimes we're not even conscious of our expectations until we're disappointed. Secondly, the problem with expectations is when they're unrealistic. Sometimes we have expectations that aren't reasonable, or there's no evidence to support that it can or will happen. Here are some examples. My small group will end on time this week, even though it never has. Those close to me will make my birthday special, even though in past years they haven't. Someone told me recently that when they text their friend, they expect them to text back immediately. And I asked, well, what's immediately? And she said, 30 seconds. And I said, that's probably unrealistic. Thirdly, expectations are a problem when they're unspoken. Many times our expectations are actually never said out loud. For example, each of your colleagues will remove their food from the office refrigerator at the end of the week. Or the extended family will help in paying for the grandparents' anniversary party. Or all leaders will attend prayer meetings. Now, if you're telling yourself they should just know, that's a lie from the pit of hell. We cannot expect people to read our minds. Expectations must be spoken. Finally, expectations are a problem when they are unagreed upon. Very often, I have expectations of others that they have never agreed to, or people have expectations of me I've never agreed to. Just because you invited your son and his girlfriend for dinner doesn't mean you can expect they will or should come. Or just because you ask a friend for a ride doesn't mean they will do it or have to do it. I also realized I had expectations of people they didn't agree to. I'd speak my expectations, for instance, in an email to church volunteers to be at an event we were hosting 30 minutes before it was about to begin. And I was shocked when they arrived 30 minutes after the event began. I later realized, although I had spoken via an email the expectation, they actually never agreed that they would or could come 30 minutes early. Think with me for a moment of the countless expectations around workplaces. Things like overtime, coworker birthdays, or who cleans out the staff refrigerator. Expectations around home and family. Do I buy birthday presents for my brother's children? How often should I call my mom or dad? Do I go to the family Christmas party since I'm expected to? Or how about expectations around neighbors? There are expectations about loud music after certain hours, barking dogs, teenagers' friends taking food from the refrigerator without asking. And then expectations at church. The pastor will return my phone calls within 24 hours. The church will help me parent my teenage sons. I will hang out with people in my small group on weekends.
Here's the million-dollar question. What expectations do we have a right to, and what expectations don't we have a right to? This skill helps us to distinguish between these two things. What is a valid expectation and what is an invalid expectation? Sometimes we don't even know we have an expectation until we're angry or disappointed. That's why a lack of clarity about expectations can be like stepping on a landmine. Suddenly you're in the midst of the fallout and pain of a strained relationship.
So let's be clear about what makes an expectation valid. There are 4 criteria. First, expectations must be conscious. That is, I'm aware of my expectation. Secondly, they must be realistic. That means there's evidence to support the expectation is reasonable of me or someone else. Either it has been done in the past or the person has the capacity and willingness to do it. I want to make a special note here. The reason this is so important is that unrealistic expectations are a leading cause of depression. Disappointment can make the heart sick, literally, as Proverbs says, when something doesn't happen you were expecting. So when it comes to work projects or ministry experiences or family gatherings and friendships, you have to really think about whether your expectations are realistic or not. Thirdly, expectations must be spoken. That is, I have expressed the expectation clearly. And then finally, expectations have to be agreed upon. The other person has agreed to the expectation by saying yes. So here's the principle. An expectation is only valid when mutually agreed upon. Let me repeat that since it's so important. An expectation is only valid when mutually agreed upon.
Now, before we send you off to practice the skill, I want to mention a few exceptions to the agreed upon criteria. As our children's authority figure, as parents, for example, we don't need their agreement before we ask them to do household chores. In work, where there is an employer-employee contract, there's already an overall agreement. It's built into the marriage vow as well, expectations that you will not flirt and that you'll be faithful to love your spouse for the rest of your life. Now, before we have you practice this skill, we want to show you a vignette of the wrong way and then the right way of clarifying an expectation. Then we ask you to go to your workbook and follow the instructions to practice clarifying expectations yourself.
Okay, Mom, I think we're all set.
Oh, honey, it's been so good having you home for Thanksgiving. We're both glad you're able to make the trip.
Me too. This has been a lot of fun.
That's good. So I was thinking when you're back for the week of Christmas, your sister will be coming in and both your cousins are able to make it too. And you know how much fun you have when you're all together. So I was thinking we should try out that new Thai restaurant that just opened. And you know how much we love ice skating. I think we should spend an afternoon at the ice rink. And I was also thinking that there's a new movie that's opening up that your dad was talking about. We could have a day to fit that in since you'll be home for the whole Christmas week.
But Mom, we never said the whole week.
Oh, honey, it'll be great.
But Mom, I have a whole vacation in New York planned with my friends for part of Christmas week.
Oh, but it's nothing definite, right? Just tell me you can't go.
Mom. All right, Mom, I'm all set.
Oh, it's been so good having you home for Thanksgiving. We're both so glad you were able to make the trip.
Me too. This has been a lot of fun.
So listen, before you leave, I was wondering if we could have a quick conversation about Christmas.
Sure. My flight isn't leaving for a bit, so I have a little time.
Good. I realize that I have some expectations of you about Christmas, and I just thought we could take a moment to clarify those expectations.
Sure, let's talk about it.
Well, as I mentioned earlier this week, your sister would be coming in for Christmas. I just found out that both your cousins are able to come in for the week of Christmas as well.
That's awesome.
It is, but then I realized that, well, since your sister and your cousins would be here for that week, I just assumed that you would want to be here for that week as well. But then I also realized that I never shared with you those expectations and you never agreed to it coming home for the week of Christmas. But do you think that's something you can do?
Gosh, Mom, that might be a little difficult.
How come?
Well, my friends and I were planning to go to New York for pretty much that part of Christmas. You know, and since I have this massive project at work that has been taking a lot of my time and a lot of my energy, I was really looking forward to this trip for a while. But I'll be here for Christmas, and I'm looking forward to that as well.
Well, I had no idea. And I didn't realize that your work project was taking up so much of your time. And you have been wanting to spend time with your college friends. I guess I was just so excited that everyone would be here all together for that week.
Well, listen, Mom. I know that being together with the family and our cousins is really important. So let me have a little chat with my friends about logistics. Maybe I can spend a few days here and then meet up with them later. I'll let you know what I can agree to, but let me talk to them first and figure out the commitment around our rental agreement.
Okay, sure. That sounds like a good plan. I'm glad we were able to clarify that.
Mm-hmm.
That was huge. Oh, have a good trip.
Thanks. Bye.
In closing, it is important to mention that not all unmet expectations have the same level of disappointment. Some disappointments are small, others medium, and others very large. This skill, clarify expectations, is used for small and medium-sized expectations, not large or very large expectations around very significant disappointments such as, I never expected to get divorced, or I never expected to lose my job or have a special needs child. These type of large unmet expectations result in deep, deep disappointment, and they deserve their own space for grieving. Nonetheless, learning this skill truly has the capacity to significantly change your life, as making assumptions are the source of much preventable pain in our relationships. Clarifying expectations is foundational for creating a healthy culture, whether it be in a church, a family, a marriage, a workplace, friendships, a team, a ministry, and I could go on and on. The key is that you practice this skill until it becomes second nature to you. You will find that many, many issues are resolved by simply clarifying expectations around them. Others, however, require negotiation to solve them, and this will be covered in session 7 with the skill we call clean fighting.
Let me address 3 common questions. The first is, what do I do when someone cannot meet my expectation? Now, this happens a lot. So, for example, you and your sister have had a mutual expectation to go on vacation together for the last 10 years. Now she has changed her mind due to a new job and a serious boyfriend. So what do? You grieve the loss and accept her decision. So now you turn your expectation into a hope that someday she may change her mind or her life situation changes. A second common question that comes up is, what do I do if I have an agreed upon expectation with someone and then they don't do it? Perhaps they said yes because they were afraid to say no to you. Remember that if a person cannot say no to you, then what you have is not an expectation, but a demand. Maybe it wasn't clear enough. You may need to go back to clarify the issue again. Or maybe they thought they could do it and later realized they couldn't. You will need to explore the reasons. A third question is often, what do I do if God doesn't meet my expectations? You can rest assured that God often will not. We like to know where God is going, what He is doing, how we're going to get there, and when we will arrive. So often we try to take charge of God and control the way life unfolds, and we end up making Him our servant. We make a deal with God that goes like this: I'll obey you and keep my side of the bargain, and you will bless me and not allow any serious suffering in my life. God is knowable, having revealed Himself in Jesus Christ and in Scripture, but He's also unknowable. That is, He's utterly above us and transcendent, with thoughts and plans that are far above ours. Most of the time, we have no idea what God's doing. That's why Augustine wrote, if you understand, it's not God you understand. And that's why learning to spend time with God each week through the Emotionally Healthy Relationships Day by Day book is so essential to the course. The rhythm of meeting with God twice a day and seeking to do silence and stillness is meant to help us surrender our will and our plans to Him. Each day we stop to be with Jesus, we are declaring, I need you. It's an act of humility. So this week, go to chapter 2 on Stop Mind Reading and Clarify Expectations in your day-to-day devotional. And also, before your next meeting, we ask you to practice the Stop Mind Reading skill and the Clarify Expectations skill at least twice each. Set aside time when you can think about any assumptions or mind reading that you might be engaging in. Session 3 next week is called Genogram Your Family. You'll be looking at your family going back 3 to 4 generations. So please don't forget the pre-reading in your workbook before that session. So thanks. And now as we close this session, may God fill you with His power that you might become what the book of Proverbs calls a wise, discerning person who gives thought to their ways and loves the world well as a result.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Destiny, if you weren't here last week. Oh, you guys are so sweet. Oh, I love this video so much. They crack me up, but there was so much conviction this week. So let's open in prayer. Lord, I just thank you. I thank you for bringing these things to our attention. I thank you that you are a light to our feet and that we don't have to do this. We get to do this one step at a time with you. So I just ask for wisdom and discernment and revelation. Would you bring things to each and every one of our minds that you want us to step into, that you want us to work on? Help us to soften our hearts and humble us and see our ways and take responsibility for our parts in our relationship. And help us to do this with humility and love, with the intention of loving others well. So yeah, we just love you. We honor you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Okay. You know what I love? I love in the video where it's the mother and the son. I love that second version of it because it really demonstrates how each person in the relationship needs to have some flexibility. So, he didn't go and rescue her from it, but he did start to create flexibility. He responded because he could hear his mom's desire. She gave him the choice. She didn't force his hand, so he didn't run out the door. And I think in healthy relationships, how the other person feels should matter to us because it matters deeply to God. So when I stand before God one day, I want to make sure that without a shadow of a doubt, I was loyal to Him, I walked in relationship with Him, and I loved others well. And there is a huge difference between loving someone and loving someone well. And so I want to thank you guys for being here and taking the time to intentionally love other people well. So often I see really healthy tools like boundaries weaponized these days, and it breaks my heart because so much of, let me slow down for a second. Because if it grieves my heart, then how much more does it grieve the Father's heart, right? He gives us these tools, but we're meant to use them with flexibility because we care so deeply about how the other person is going to respond. So thinking about the purpose of this tool in stopping mind reading, it should be used to clarify what another person is thinking instead of making the assumption. Sometimes the most simple tools can be the most powerful. If I had stopped mind reading, I could have stopped therapy a while ago. I went to a few marriage therapists. I worked on this a while with my husband. So step 1, reflecting, being honest in what you are believing or thinking that the other person hasn't shared with you yet. Really spending time here. Noticing if anything is coming up for you like a theme. If there is a theme coming up for you when you're reflecting on an assumption you have and you just start noticing like, wow, I feel rejected often. I feel not wanted often. I feel like I can't do enough often. I want to encourage you guys that this might be a cue from God or an invitation into deeper healing. Maybe you seek out a therapist, you go to freedom prayer, and you start to challenge some of this. But once you've reflected, I love the next step. You ask for permission. Going back to checking verbiage, how we did with puzzled and curious last week. So can I check out an assumption I'm making with you? Would you allow me the space to read your mind? I love this because you're asking permission. You're giving the other person space to love you well, right? You don't want to do it at the wrong time when they don't have the time to stop and really acknowledge what you're feeling, really acknowledge that, you're hurt or you're feeling a certain type of way, and take the time to reflect. So I love the part where you ask for permission. Hey, do you have, can I check something with you? And then step 3, I'm believing maybe you think this or that. Is that true of you? So making sure it's a good time for them. Oh, we talked about that. Okay, so checking your assumption. So there are countless studies, yes, that's what I want to get to. There are countless studies about what meditating on stress does to the nervous system. So when you're laying in bed and you're reflecting on what if something awful happens to a family member, or what if this ends in divorce, or what if this ends, your body oftentimes is actually physically going through if that were actually happening. They've done a lot of studies where they hooked everyone up with a bunch of electrodes and they watched the brain waves, and their systems are going into fight or flight. So I just think, in using these tools, we're sparing ourselves from a lot of pain. We're honoring our nervous system by letting it rest. And I promise you, it's only uncomfortable the first few times you start practicing it. It does become second nature. So I like that part. Clarifying expectations. I loved how they demonstrated this. It can be really uncomfortable this is what I wanted to make a strong note of. If you are a rescuer, if you are someone that has a hard time letting other people sit in uncomfortable emotions, this is going to be harder for you. It can be really uncomfortable to just let them sit in the disappointment. So I want you to take this as an opportunity to practice empathy. Practice not rescuing them from the disappointment in small things, of course, who doesn't want their kiddo to come back for the holidays? Their expectation to be met. But I loved how there was flexibility there, and she was able to meet him in that place and just say, hey, you do want to spend time with your friends. I see that. And then, it softened him, and he was like, oh, I want to spend time with you too. So I get so nervous talking in front of a group of people, you guys. I start getting cotton mouth, but you guys are so kind. Thank you. Whew. Thanks, Gay. Appreciate you. So our God is a God of order. That's what I wanted to get to. So when we do this, we say no to confusion. We say no to chaos, to misunderstanding, to rebellion, to agreeing with false narratives, to agreeing with lies that we're creating in our mind. And it's so important. I also want to challenge you here, really practice using your voice. Because if you are the type of person that often when conflict comes in or something happens and you're uncomfortable and you avoid or you run away and you just don't say anything, oftentimes the other person is writing a narrative for you. They're creating whatever is going on inside of them, and oftentimes the lens isn't really healthy, Hopefully it is, but oftentimes they're feeling hurt that you're not leaning in, that you're not explaining or reaching for them. So I really want to encourage you that if you're a person who tends to shy away, to not use your voice, the Bible says that there is the life and death are in the power of the tongue. So lean in, challenge their narratives, and it gives them space to challenge them as well. I have a good example of somebody who clarified expectations recently. So I'm on the prophetic art team, and Lou is our director, she's our leader, and she stood up and she clarified the expectations of the team. What was expected when we came to partner, what was expected when we showed up, and what time we showed up. And nobody likes to set expectations, so it's always kind of a little daunting, like how are they going to receive this, But it was so beautiful because it gave the chance for the team to turn and just say thank you. Thank you for clarifying the expectations, because when we don't know what's expected of us, we can't rise to meet the expectation. We don't know if we're doing enough. We don't know if we're doing too much. And so it just created this peace, this solidarity between us, and gave people a chance to either step up or step down or to serve or to get comfortable being served, and it created a lot of opportunity for healing in each one of us. So taking that time to clarify expectations, it was important for our team. I've been a part of this team for a while, and it was the first time that it wasn't just on paper where we all signed it and agreed, but we talked about it, we leaned in, we asked questions, and it was a really awesome moment. And then I'll end with this. So I had a huge win because I had so many unconscious, unrealistic, unspoken, unagreed upon expectations of my family. And I was angry. I was walking around a lot of times just frustrated with my kiddos, with my husband. And it wasn't that they weren't doing enough, it was that we weren't all seeing each other because we were all busy. So I went to my friend's house, I was helping her with her kids, and she had a digital calendar. And on the digital calendar, you could see everybody's day, and then if you clicked your name, you could see your chores, and you could like cross off the chores. So I did that, and it gave me so much more grace for how busy everyone's day was, but it also had everybody step up and say, oh, this is my part today. You know? Oh, and it was realistic, right? Because oftentimes my default is my yes kid. You know, and that's just how it works. You know, when we don't have, well, I don't want to say he doesn't have boundaries, but he's definitely my yes kid. And so it's easier for me to say, hey kiddo, will you do the dishes? Because I know I'm not going to have to go find him later. Hey kiddo, will you vacuum? Because he's going to say yes and he's going to do a thorough job. So this gave the chance for everybody to see like, hey, tonight was my night for dinner. Tonight was my night for dishes. Tonight was my night, you know, and I made sure that everybody had a Sabbath day. So that was a win because I was frustrated. I felt like I was carrying a lot, or sometimes I felt like my husband was doing too much, especially when he was working overtime, or, you know, or one of my kiddos goes, he's in school a lot longer than the other one, so I was taking a lot off of him. So let's end with this. What expectations do we have a right to have, and what expectations do we not have a right to have? I want to encourage you to really try this out. I laughed about the Miss Naps part. That one was so funny because it was calling to attention also, because calling it to attention also had to have the wife go, would I be upset? And honestly, maybe she would have been, right? Like if we're honest, when we get home and we have a ton to do and we look over and our spouse or our kiddo or, you know, our roommate or someone, they're taking a nap, you're just like, oh, the audacity, right? It's frustrating. So when he asked that question, it gave her a chance to reflect, to be really honest with herself. Would I be upset? Right? And the answer should be no, you can rest. You know, you can rest, and then maybe we'll do this, and maybe we have to make some other arrangements, you know, for another time. But yeah, it was just funny. Like, she's like, oh yeah, it's fine, nap. I was just thinking, maybe. And then, of course, there were the exceptions that they pointed out. I wanted to encourage, one of the exceptions they made were for the parent and the child. I don't think they said it in the video, but I read it in the book. And I think this is a golden opportunity. I know I met with some really awesome people last week who were talking about how to create healthier relationships with their kids, have them take responsibility, make sure that they're being appreciated. I think this is a golden opportunity for us to teach them to take responsibility for their side of the relationship under the safety of our own roof, right? Like, if you can get them to, if we go back to that one step where we're making, let me just go back so I get the words. Conscious, realistic, spoken, agreed upon expectations. If they can agree to those things and you're able to challenge them, like, hey, is that really a realistic expectation for you? And get them to kind of put these things in place. What you're really doing is that you're empowering them to be responsible for their part in the relationship. And so I really want to challenge those of you that do have kids to really call them higher this week when you're doing this stuff. And then lastly, next week is genograms. I won't get to be here, but I am excited for you guys, and I really want to challenge you guys, even if you haven't done it yet, to lean in, do the homework, look through your family line, because if you can have that time to really sit and see where there's been cutoffs or breaks and start to recognize patterns, I think you can come in with a lot of really good questions that you can share with your group, with everybody who's going to be leading next week, and yeah, I think God has a lot of healing He wants to do in and through next week too. So. Thank you for having me.
Do we have any questions for Destiny?
Does anyone have questions? Have I clarified expectations? Oh, thank you. Everybody's so kind here. My nervous system just has to catch up. marriage therapy. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think that's important. That has actually come up in my own marriage many times in both directions. I think this is a good chance to practice empathy. It brings me back to that verse to be quick to listen, slow to anger, slow to speak, and just allowing the space for the other person to communicate. Really giving them opportunities to open up and share. I think just continuously inviting them into the dialogue you want to have in simple ways here and there, where you're not flooding them with it, where you're not just throwing everything on them, just little baby steps. And the way this course breaks it down, it's really the most simple questions and the most simple tools are often the most profound, right? Like we struggle all the time with our health, but really we know we need to eat healthy and work out. There's really simple solutions, but they're really hard to do. They're hard to utilize. So I think practicing these step by step, using like verbiage that's true to you. Hey babe, I'm just curious. Instead of starting like an accusation, which can come off really passive aggressive. Hey babe, I'm just wondering why you didn't get the dishes done. It's like, hey, how was your day? Like start there. How are you feeling right now? And kind of see if you can unpack it, right? So I would say just simple, bridging that gap, especially if you're in an unequally unyoked marriage, or an unequally yoked marriage. Just being really gentle, right? Pastor John talked about the fruits of the Spirit this week: gentleness, kindness, self-control, patient, and leaning into prayer while you practice the tools, giving them the time to catch up, especially if you come from a more emotionally healthy home, or you've spent a lot more time doing the healing that they are still catching up to. They might not be where you're at, so being the example. Hope I answered it. That's a hard one. I struggle with that. It's hard. It's hard when you love somebody, and and you see the disappointment. You want to pick it up, especially. I feel like that's a common theme among moms. So there's something I said in the very beginning, and I thought like the Lord really highlighted it to me. I wrote it out before I really thought about it, and it says, in healthy relationships, how the other person feels should matter to us because it matters deeply to God. I think that's a really important thing to come back to, making sure that when you're practicing these tools, that the other person really they care about how you're feeling, and if not, reaching out for a friend, a therapist, freedom prayer, something to really check: is this a healthy relationship? Am I talking with somebody who's receiving it? I hope that answered it. I think I went off track. That's good. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think, well, one, sometimes the people that we surround ourselves with or gravitate towards initially, or just because life happens, sometimes we're in unhealthy circles. And when somebody is assertive, it can feel aggressive. It can feel really uncomfortable to people who aren't used to using their voice. So, checking in with like a friend, maybe somebody that is healthy or that you just feel really safe with, and saying, let me check in with you on this. How would you receive this? And really being honest with yourself. Was I aggressive when I said that? Was I frustrated when I said that? Or did I just simply say, hey, why don't we go and do this? And if it's the latter, I would often say that you are not alone. You just find yourself surrounded in a group where either you have to slowly kind of call them higher up with you, or start surrounding yourself with, people who are willing to make room for that, right? Because to slander one another when they're just being assertive, it's painful. It's like, wait a minute. God intends us to be powerful and use our voice. So if you're asking me a question and I answer the question, it should be received with respect and dignity and honor. And yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there. And I would say you're definitely not alone in that. Yeah. Yeah, right. There's like philandering. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you can definitely approach it differently, giving options like, hey, what about this or this? And seeing if you get the same feedback. Like, oh, they're still upset with it. That's interesting, right? Taking it in.
What you want to do? I get to do what I get to do. Come on, speak up.
I get that a lot though. When people start being assertive and using their voice, people receive it really aggressively. Or when people set boundaries, like, let's just be real. Like, it's uncomfortable when somebody sets a boundary with you. You're just like, I guess you can't drive all the way out there. I'll have to meet you halfway. But like our initial response is kind of like, and then we start to remember, okay, I love this person. I want to meet this person halfway. I'm happy they set this boundary with me. So yeah, being okay with the initial response, giving them space for it. But I would say if it keeps happening, it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. Yeah.
Who else has another question? Monica, do you have another question?
I was going to say just a follow-up statement to that. Sometimes it's like a level of maturity for the other person if they don't respond. Because I've had years of working with boundaries, years, and from the person throwing tantrums to subtle responses. So with that, you just see the level of maturity. You can only be responsible for your part.
That's so true. Yeah.
As you work and grow through it. And often, as you continue standing your ground, the other person will they'll come along with you willingly or unwillingly at times.
Yeah, I think that's one of the caveats I always make when I'm talking about boundaries and like within the therapeutic room is you have to be okay with people are either going to come on board or they might fall away, right? I'm going to be flexible. I'm going to try and meet you where you're at. I'm going to have reasonable expectations, but there does come a time and a place where it's just like I can't entertain this unhealthiness anymore. And I think that's a healthy place to be as long as we're not using it as like a weapon, Like, oh, you didn't meet it. You don't get to be in my life. So I'm going to give you a chance to come over here and love me well because I want to love you well.
I think, too, when you are a recovering people pleaser and you're in a group, family, whatever it may be, and you are learning to speak and have your voice, they're not used to that. And so their responses to you, it's kind of like, wait a minute, this is not normal for her to speak up like this. And how do we deal with this? And there can be some uncomfortable or hurt feelings as you navigate, going from that unhealthy people-pleasing personality. So I've experienced that. I don't know if anybody else has.
That's so true. That is so true. The thing that gives me peace in that, because I'll tell you, I wish my sister could be here sometime so we could shoot each other glances. Like I got vertigo over Christmas, and I'm usually the helper. I'm the one that's up and tending to everything, and I couldn't be that person this year. And there were a lot of unmet expectations in that room. And yeah, but when you are in that place where you have taken up the place of being the people pleaser, or you've taken God's place of like, hey, I'm going to maintain the peace and fulfill everything that needs to be done here, it can be really hard to step into healthy, right? Like that, it can just be uncomfortable at first. And so I really want to urge you guys, practice with safe people. Like even Jesus wasn't received well in his hometown. The people that knew him so well, that grew up around him, he wasn't received there. right? Right. So like, how much more, he went through that. We can lean on him when it gets painful, but we can practice with healthy people, and realize, hey, this is what the response probably should be. Even though I got this here, this is probably what it should have been. That's good. Thank you for bringing that up.
Who else has a question or comment?
These were good
Bonnie,
tonight,
do
you
you
guys.
wanna-
Thank you.
So I have a little bit of a question, and maybe you could speak more into this about creating safe spaces for two opposing viewpoints, and it's still being okay, and you're still in the same boat, going the same direction. So I had one of my kids was making a decision I did not agree with, and it was still okay. I still loved him, or whomever it was. And
Which one?
whoever it was in my household, I still loved him, but I didn't agree with the decision he was making. So he was so upset that I didn't agree with him. It took days to unravel why. And the why was he was afraid I was disappointed that he wasn't making the decision I would want him to make. And I told him, in our household, it's okay to have opposing viewpoints and us not be at war. I get my feeling and you get your feeling, and it's okay. And I said, but in this house, what you won't do is tell me what I have to do for this. So can you talk a little more into that, on how somebody can create that space for that type of dialogue?
I think you did really well. You created a safe place, right? Me and Gary were talking about this last week, that we could both see you have been thriving as a therapist, because people so often come to you for wisdom and guidance. But Des is so wise. Oh my goodness. Yeah, creating that safe space. I kind of alluded a little bit to this. I think last week I was nervous, so I rushed through it. But I think it's getting curious. I had to go and sit with a friend and run it by her, because I was so hurt, because I have all boys, so I can say he lied to me, and I knew he lied to me. He lied right to my face, and I was so crushed. We were sitting there having breakfast. I was so crushed that I wanted to get mad. I wanted to get angry. I was angry. Like, how can you not feel safe? Why is he not telling me? And when I went and I sat with my friend, she reminded me of the simple tool: get curious, right? Like, when it's our stuff and it's right in front of us, like, sometimes it's important to have somebody safe to unpack it with, because you're so close to it, you can't always see it clearly. So she was like, yeah, I would get curious. I'd start asking questions, right? And that was from last week. And so I did. And it was the same thing. It turned out he didn't want me to think a certain kind of way of him. He didn't want to be embarrassed, He felt embarrassed. He felt ashamed of his behavior, and didn't want me to start to make assumptions, which I often do. So I think creating a safe space, really stating it out loud, using your voice, like, hey, it's safe. It's okay if you don't agree with me. I want to hear from you. Your voice matters. Like, Holy Spirit's talking to you too. What do you have to say? And I think you did that. You did it really well. And creating that space for them to really slowly start to, like, okay, what if I say this? Can I trust her? Okay, what about now? Can I go a little deeper? And I think the safer you are, the more they're going to come towards you, whether it be a kid, a partner, a spouse. I think for a really long time, I made my spouse feel unsafe, right? Because I would attack what he said. And I think when I started softening my heart towards him, he started coming closer and closer, and that's when real healing happened. So we did have opposing views. He was seeing things a completely different way than I was seeing them, because we grew up with two different households. We had two sets of lenses. They were both broken in their own way, and we were experiencing our reality very different. And when you matter that much to each other, and you have opposing views, it's scary. It's so scary, right? Because you're like, this is my person. And you don't know what to do. You don't know to protect yourself and push them away. You start to panic. So having people you can talk to, and just creating a safe space to say, like, hey, you can. And that takes a lot of intention. It takes a lot of, like, I'm going to keep my face like this. Because I get judgy with my kiddos sometimes, or my husband. You can see it all over my face. So just being intentional. I think you did it really well with your son. the fact that he felt safe enough to finally get to the point of saying that's a mom win right there.
So, how do you have any tools that we could use in our own home that when somebody is trying to relate their feelings, and maybe they don't have the verbiage, the right words to stick to their feelings, so they're still working it out? How do you have any tools that we could use that we wouldn't jump to our assumptions and say it for them?
Coming to mind right now. I think somebody who's really good at doing this is, I don't know if you remember Tracy Brown. She's married to Aaron Brown now. She's so gentle. I heard her talking to her kids when they were here, and she was just so curious and so gentle. And I think that's the key. It's just this gentle openness, the questioning, and letting it be, right? Like, I'm a fixer. I want to fix it all the time. But trying not to fix it, just leaning in, practicing empathy, right? I don't know if you've ever seen that one video. Who did it? It's Sue Johnson. And she's talking about empathy. And empathy, it's so important, right? Creating that space of empathy in the house. She walks up, it's like a little cartoon of a bear and like a fox or something. And the bear is like in a deep depression. He's in a hole. And the fox is like, oh, looks bad down there. Would you like a sandwich? You know? And he's just kind of pointing out that, like, he's sympathizing, but he's not going down into the hole with the bear. And, well, at least you're down there. I forget what he says. He kind of, like, silver lines it. He writes it off. And then at one part of the video, I showed this to all the couples I worked with. He climbs down into the hole, and he says, it must be really hard down here. Right? Like, how much sometimes when we're in when you were younger, you think back to your younger self, and something was really hard for you, and you're sitting on your bed, and you're alone. And you just wish that somebody would come in and sit with you and be like, it must be really hard in here. It must be really hard to go to school and be there, right? And not, hey, I have all these strategies to fix it. Because we've already laid in bed, right? We've already laid in bed and replayed at that point 1,000 different ways we could fix it. And maybe there is good advice, and maybe they're going to open their heart enough to say, hey, friend, hey, mom, what would you do in this? But I think the first place is like creating a space of empathy. Hey, it's safe. Like, hey, how was your day? Man, that sucks. And that's it. And then backing up. Man, that must be really hard. You had a hard day. And letting them come to you. Because otherwise, I think often when I just give advice, the walls go up. I didn't ask for that. You can close my door on the way out. No, it's not that bad. Sometimes it is. But yeah, just creating, I think starting with empathy. Like, the simple tools, I think, are the most powerful.
Does anybody have any other questions?
I'm sitting here smiling, and I'm like, okay, I'm just smiling at you, but it's because I feel like it's God's heart smiling, because you were nervous up there, but you hit here, Q&As, and like you're in your flow state. That's what the kids say,
let's
flow
talk.
state. Flow state. And my heart is smiling because you were just so nervous up there, but I'm just like, almost giddy, and I feel like God's heart is giddy looking at you saying, look at her go. Like,
So sweet.
so I just wanted to encourage you there.
I appreciate that so much. Oh my gosh. I hug you, Monica.
I'm going to piggyback on that, but I was going to say, I noticed that you were nervous behind the podium, and I think you would prefer to stand on the ground without the podium.
I see you using those tools, Gay.
I was going to do that.
I am so proud of you. Oh, you guys, this has been so good. Thank you. I love it. I think, I don't know, just loving and loving well. It's such an important topic, and I'm so blessed to go to this church where we come together and we say we want to love people well. Amen. Right? And we want, just intentional.
Because I was thinking, like, with the examples, with a lot of them, it's that when we're mind reading, that we're gonna go to the person and they're gonna clarify, and it's gonna be like, oh, that thing that I was afraid of isn't what it was. But what happens when it is? What happens when you mind read and they actually, like the lady that said, I feel like you think it's my responsibility to plan the whole trip or whatever it was. What if the husband had been like, yeah, I do think that. Like, right? You know what I mean? So what's the like follow up to that, other than like I knew it, you know, like what then?
I think if you could keep your wits about you. I think the next step would be like, yeah, okay, I'm so glad that I asked you that. Can we clarify some expectations? You know, yeah. Or like, yeah, I hear you. You know, can I hear more about that, or why you're believing that is true? And just trying to figure out like where they're coming from. You know, because let's just use an example. If it was my husband, he's like, if I was to say, I feel responsible, like you feel like I'm supposed to plan the whole vacation, he would probably say, yeah, because you want to. You may want to partner with me, but you want to plan it, you know? But really saying like, hey, I want to dream with you. I want to partner with you. I want to hear about what you want to do while we're there. So can we clarify a couple of expectations? That's the next place I would go. Those 4 tools, I forget what the words are, but let's make sure they're realistic, that what you're expecting of me is realistic, because I want to be able to rise to it, and I don't want to feel like I'm failing all the time. Right? That's a terrible feeling where you feel like you just can't meet it, but you agreed to it. You know? And I think if you find yourself there, it's good to come back. Like this, I don't think this is a one like time stop and shop. This is we're gonna come back to these tools again and again. Like going through this workbook, like the Lord convicted me so much this week on little things I just need to come back to. Even when I read it, I was reading it this morning and I thought, wow, this would have been a lot more helpful yesterday too. I should have remembered and recalled these things to my mind, right? It's like when you come into church and you hear the message again and again, like we need to keep coming back to grace and empathy and peace and what it means to cultivate those things in our home intentionally. So I think that's a really good question, yeah.
Do you have any advice for somebody who's dealing with somebody who's controlling, and like that scenario, you approach your husband and he says, yeah, if you want the vacation, you plan it. And then what do you do with that? What do you do with that disappointment? Like, no, I thought we were going to dream together on this, and they have no desire.
I think he kind of alluded a little bit to grieving it, right? Like certain things need to be grieved. Like, man, I was really hoping for that. And it's true, I'm bummed, I'm sad. Even the mom, when her son wasn't gonna spend all the time, like she was bummed, right? Like, how do you not rush in to fix that? Like, you're my mom, you know, I wanna fix it. But coming back to that, I lost my track because I'm thinking about the mom and the son now. What were we talking about, Des?
Grieving.
Oh. I think that's why God highlighted that statement that I read to you again, is that in a healthy relationship, the other person should care how you feel. If you're in a relationship, you know, and I know I'm not speaking to everybody, but if you find yourself in a relationship where the other person just doesn't, and this is a common theme, like go and seek out love and care. There are so many resources in this valley that I did not know existed. You know, there are places, whether you have state insurance, you know, IEHP, personal insurance, they have sliding scale where you can come and say, hey, this is all I can pay. I know people who've paid $5 for sessions for 12 months, you know? And it just depends. Sometimes therapists can meet you there. Sometimes therapists aren't allowed to meet you there, or they don't have the means to do that. But if you're in one of those relationships, I just want to say that's not God's heart for you. Right? Like, God wants his sons and his daughters to be loved well. And so there's a place to give them space and time and empathy and just time to catch up and meet you where you're at. But then there's another place to say, like, do you care? You know, are you in this too? And do I need to reevaluate with like a trusted mentor, a teacher, a pastor, a friend? So I would really encourage you, if that keeps coming up, if that's a theme, I would reach out for help, because sometimes when we're so close in it, we don't realize what's really happening. And I've been there, you know, and I hold a lot of space for hope and reconciliation for people who go through it. But there is a place where it's needed, where we need to draw boundaries in the sand. We need to clarify expectations, and we need to call our partners higher. We need to call our friends higher. We need to call ourselves higher and say, hey, how do we need to show up so that we're both here? We're both doing this, right? Like, I deserve to be loved well just as much as I expect that I should be loving you well. Like, we should both be coming to this. And if that's not happening, like, reach out for somebody, because it's a lot easier to look in and help than it is when you're in it and you're alone in it.
Does anybody anybody else have any other questions besides me?
So a long time ago, and the communication wasn't going quite like one would hope. And there was an expectation of something getting done, and I felt that maybe it was unrealistic. And so I followed through with what the desire was, and I was complaining the whole time to myself. And as I was getting a sand load of in the back of my pickup for a play box, I was talking to the Lord, and I'm complaining, and I'm listening for answers. And his answer was, go home and love your wife. That was it.
Or whoever it may be.
So I think it's really important for us to remember that our spouse is not our enemy. You know, and I think a lot of times we get wrapped up in procedures and formats and bullet points. But we have to remember that we are in a covenant with God, and He desires for us to work this out with Him. So I think it's really important.
Amen. When it came to that word flexibility, it kept ringing true too, right? There has to be flexibility on both sides. When you set boundaries, they're meant to be a gate that somebody can walk through. It's not meant to be this brick wall. You know, so I love that we're called to be flexible. We're called to put our pride down and love our person and be okay with that, right? Right? There's just certain things that are, yeah, that's good. That's good, Gary. What? Are we sure?
Okay, I have a question. So, what if there's like two people who are in relationship with one another, but there's been a lot of like broken trust and a lot of violations and just, you know, a lot of water under the bridge. Okay, so what are some practical, and because of that, they don't want to say the truth to each other. You know what I mean? So like, what are some practical ways to like rebuild trust? Because like, if you're in that broken of a relationship and you really want to heal it, but you're afraid to say the truth, like let's say, you know, the person says like, oh, can I check what is it called?
Can I check an assumption with you?
Yeah,
can
I
read
check
your
an
mind?
assumption with you? And then they're like, okay, but then they're afraid to say the real truth. Like, how do you rebuild trust in a relationship where things have been so fractured that it feels like you just start at 0 or even -10?
That's a good question. I would say slow and steady. When there has been so many repeated offenses, it's painful. I have relationships like that, ones that went well and ones that did not. But I think if both people can agree, like, hey, you matter to me. Hey, I love you and I want to do this well. And they can do that using tools like this, maybe having somebody kind of an accountability person that they can talk to and lean into. Because it can be scary, right? Like I've sat on that couch with my own husband, and it's scary. It's scary to reach for somebody when they've burned you. It's scary, you know, and I've been the burner and I've been the burned, you know. And it's scary to reach back and know that it can be trusted, but the only way to know is to reach. And so it's that mutually agreed upon, this matters enough to me to work on it, making sure that that's the case for both people, I think. And I think if that is the case, reconciliation requires time, and it requires people showing up and doing what is expected. I think the hurt really is what'll kind of outline the narrative of what really needs to be reconciled, what really needs to happen. But I would say it's just that slow build towards trust, right? But as long as both people are agreeing, I think anything can be reconciled, especially when God is in it. Good question. Yeah. Sometimes it picks it up, sometimes it doesn't.
Anyone else?
Okay, well, you guys are dismissed to your groups. Thank you, Destiny, again.
Thank you for having me, you
spending
guys.
time with us.
It was
And
so fun.
If you have any questions, you just come and see me or Destiny or Ann. Bless you.